But I really see divine sexuality as another thing that's part of our birthright. And so to reclaim that is a source of healing because, I'll be damned, if I'm going to let my abusers take over any part of my life, but especially that because our sexuality it's a beautiful thing. And so I've learned, to come in connection with it that is separate from what was done to me.
Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. And this episode today is so wonderful. I am looking forward, as always, to you meeting my guest, Dina Saalisi. And she is a spiritual healer, a spiritual coach. I will share more about her background in a moment. But in this episode, we are talking about her new book and transcending sexual trauma that may be trapped in our spirit, trapped in our bodies from years ago when the incident or series of incidents took place. This is her book. It just came out last week, and I hope you can see it. Oh my gosh, this book, I cannot tell you how good this book feels. It is just wonderful. Like the pages, the cover, the pages, it feels so good, so rich and wonderful and luxurious. So I actually I'm so happy to have this book in hand, but I also want her audiobook. We talked about that as well because she has some meditations that she guides you through in the book. And so just in talking to her, you can tell that meditations with her would be pretty special. And she also has these oracle cards, spirit wood oracle cards that offer inner reflections. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So it's just a great conversation. And I'm going to share a little bit about her with you. She is a best-selling author, healer, and educator. She is a national board health and wellness coach with an advanced certificate in trauma-informed coaching. She has a hypnotherapy credential through the American Board of Hypnotherapy, and she is a master flower remedy practitioner through the International Bach Center. She offers compassionate wisdom and dynamic methods to transcend trauma with her books and her decks, which I just shared, as well as through speaking engagements, retreats, and workshops. And she resides in California. So she is a Bach Foundation registered practitioner and educator, certified trauma informed coach. As I mentioned, she's a certified hypnotherapist, and we talked about that in our conversation and much more. So I want to get to this conversation. Please subscribe to Let's Start Healing, like this episode, and share Let's Start Healing with at least one person that you know. I want to also invite you to go over to Substack, my Substack account, which is under my name, Adrienne M. Murchison. And that is a landing place for all that I do, including the different podcasts that I host and produce. And I am in the process of populating that whole site under my name, but there is still a good amount there where you can really feel the vibe of what is being offered through Let's Start Healing. So let's get to it. Let's meet Dina and let's start healing. Welcome, Dina.
Hi, Adrienne. It is so wonderful to be here with you today.
Thank you. You too. And you know what? I just realized, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly because I would actually normally say Dinah, I think.
Oh, you were right the first time.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And I'm happy to talk to you about your new book that it debuts next week,
Yes, it
correct?
is Friday on, November 28th. Yes.
Transcending Sexual Trauma.
Yes.
And before we dive into that, I want to just ask you some questions about how you're feeling today spiritually and your connection with God today. How are you? How are you feeling? How would you say you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? And then do you call God? Do you use that word? Do you use higher power or source?
Well, I guess I would prefer higher power, but really, like, I use nature as my equivalent to God, honestly. Like, that's what I feel is my
What's
God.
the word?
Nature,
Na-
nature. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And is that I was in reading your book, a
Mhm.
little of your book. I know you have a visceral, I would describe
Mm.
it as a visceral connection with nature, which I can relate to. Is that how you would describe it?
Absolutely, yes, it's a felt sense, right? And so when you ask me how I'm doing today with that felt sense, I would say that, the thing that has contributed most to my healing is the understanding and the knowing that it's always there. So
Mm.
I do, make efforts to cultivate that connection daily, but it's foundational for me. So how I'm feeling right now is, when I'm taking time to converse with you about it, I'm feeling filled. I'm feeling filled with the God essence or the goddess essence or, whatever any of us wants to relate to it as. I think it's all a similar experience, right? Which is why you're asking the question because it fills us and we don't question it, right? And I think that's the premise of what faith is, that we trust.
Mhm. Yes, and I describe that as a knowing,
Yeah.
with some people who may doubt that divine essence,
Mhm.
I think, don't believe me, you can find that within yourself.
Exactly, and we've all heard stories about people who say perhaps that they aren't connected, but then an event happens in their lives where they find the connection. So that to me and I've heard so many stories from so many different people that that proves that the connection is innate, right?
Mhm, mhm. So before we get into your book, what do you think, and I know you talk about nature in your book, what do you think that essence, that divine essence calls you to do for you? Because your book is for other people. And
Yes.
what do you think that that essence calls you to do for yourself?
Well, what it does for me is, it keeps me grounded, right? So, I mean, like, when we think of nature and actually the ground, it is the ground, the foundation, the ground underneath us, and so, I guess I've spent most of my life discovering and cultivating that connection, and so it keeps me grounded, and so when I go out into nature, even if it's in my own backyard, that I can find that grounding really quickly, right? And I know this because I do that on purpose when I feel ungrounded.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so it's this innate sense of groundedness that it gives to me every day.
Yeah, yeah. So how would you describe your book and the goal in writing this book? And congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Books are great. I mean, it's funny because, whenever there's a book, right? And, by the time a book gets released, I think you're an author as well, right?
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
and, so by the time the book gets birthed, it's already had lifetime. It's like it's had this incubation period. So now I guess my hope is with the birth of the book that it will land in each person, as they need it to, and that it will create like it's like a pebble in the pond. The book itself is like a pebble in the pond. It's not like the be all and the end all. I hope that it will spark conversation and, about deeper healing and how we can do this for ourselves and for one another. So I'm hoping that it'll just keep the conversation going. And in this case, this conversation is particularly about our transcendence over sexual trauma. But I also know that it could also be applied to any trauma. We're all human beings living in the world. We've all had big trauma. We've all had little trauma. We're experiencing little traumas each day. So I know that these tools and these practices in the book will help people to get to know themselves better, which is really foundational. And, to discover what it is that they need to continue this dialogue, this inner dialogue with themselves in order to heal.
Yeah, and in this book, the idea of this is, as we grow into adulthood and we're living our lives, if we've experienced sexual trauma in our lives, especially as a child,
Right.
then that's something that maybe we're not completely healed, and we may be unaware of tendencies or what that might
Yes.
manifest as.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that's a really good point. And in terms of the word healing, like I believe it to be just an ongoing practice of life, right? Like I don't think you cross a finish line and you get healed because there's always going to be more stuff, right? And especially if we're in relationships with other human beings, it can be hard. And then, yes, if you've experienced especially early childhood trauma, there are triggers, right? And so, one of the things that I love about this book is that it serves as validation for anyone who's survived sexual trauma to understand and to know, like you are greater than your trauma. And sure, we have emotions and we have experiences and we have triggers, but we can find the components, the tools that work to help us when we get triggered. Like, it's not about never getting triggered again. I don't think that that's realistic. It's more about learning the tools so that you can recognize, oh, this is a trigger and I can, take care of myself in the moment. So a lot of that is about self-care, right? Caring for
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mhm. And what are some of the practices that you talk about in the book?
I mean, I would say that, I call out self-awareness tools and nature-based practices are the subtitle of the book.
Mhm,
So let's start with the self-awareness tools. What that means to me is being able to go inward and to really discover more about yourself. And as we age, especially for women, I'm finding I'm in the third stage of my life. I'm postmenopausal, and I'm really finding this to be such an exciting time to understand my own needs, have time, have space, to develop deeper self-awareness. And this is like everything. I see this for women, who've struggled throughout their lives, that this is like a magical time, a liminal time where you can kind of go inward more easily. And yeah, it's a little bit mysterious, but it's also, again, our true nature. So
right.
this feels right to me. So the self-awareness tools are the inner practices. So one of the things that's great about the book is I recorded it as an audio book. And I am a hypnotherapist. I'm a trained
Mm,
hypnotherapist. So the 16 practices that are in the book, if you listen to them, you'll actually be guided through them by me.
mhm,
And I find that to be really powerful. That's really powerful
mhm,
medicine. And so they're psychospiritual practices. They're hypnotherapeutic in nature. And, some of them are inner dialogue. Like we can go inside, we can talk with our anger, with our fear, with our sorrow, discover
mhm,
what it is that it has to share with us. Some other practices are connecting with a spirit guide, right? Because sometimes we need to connect with that inner awareness that's sort of it's within us, but it's separate from us,
right,
right? So
right.
that's a good way to get information where it's not like just coming from our minds.
Mhm,
There's writing practices, there's dream work, there's connection with nature. So that's kind of the next part. Is I really, one of my hopes is that every human can go back to our innate knowing, like you said, the knowing that not only are we connected with nature, but we are a part of it energetically in this sort of supreme bubble of energy. And to me, that is the universal source that connects every human, every being, every living being on it, being aside from humans on the planet.
Yeah.
So in that way, it is like our one spiritual connection that we can all relate to. I mean, I like to point out, that the moon, it's the same moon since the dawn of time that every living being has ever seen or experienced. I mean, that to me is like really nothing short of miraculous.
Mhm, mhm.
No, really, and there's such a connection there that transcends, race or religion or class, that the more we can ground into that, the more we can feel our unity with one another, and perhaps then not feel as disconnected from each other, and that to me creates planetary healing.
Yeah. As you're talking, it's has me thinking about eye gazing.
Mm,
That's something that I really feel. Well, I know we can all do it because I've done it with different people, but it's something that I feel real connected to. And whenever I do it, the form that I would do it in is I w me and another person, we would take turns. So,
yeah,
like, if it was me and you, I
mm,
would give you love and you would receive love, and
mm,
then we would reverse that. You would give love and I would receive love. And we
yeah,
might do that for, like, 3 minutes or something
right,
like that. And when I have that experience, it is such an awareness of how we are all connected.
exactly.
I mean, there's just no question. I haven't seen it not work with anyone as long as they're willing to engage in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and how powerful is that experience? And really all you're doing is connecting with the energy. You're feeling the energy, like you're saying, that's kind of this, figure eight, right? That
Yeah.
goes to and from. And you can do it, and people do it with complete strangers, right? Like it's been done, sociologically with complete strangers to provide this sense of connection, right? Through racial diversity in schools, they did this, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
you don't have to know anything about the other person to
mhm.
feel this innate love, really. That's what it is,
No.
acceptance. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Would you talk more about getting in touch, like communicating, engaging in a loving way with our anger or our pain, within ourselves?
Yeah. Well, when I began doing work as a health coach, I worked one-on-one with clients for almost a decade. And one of the things I noticed that, people come in because they're suffering, right? That's why they need help. And, 9 times out of 10, they come to me because they wanna get rid of what feels bad. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work to try to get rid of it. Like, what I notice with most people, with myself, is you have to befriend the challenging parts of yourself because they're still parts of yourself. And so that goes back to, like, I am greater than my suffering. I am greater than my emotions. Yet I still have to give them a place to land and transform, right? So when we do inner dialogue with, say, anger, sorrow, fear, it's connecting with it and making friends with it by asking it, why are you here? Like, you're here for a reason to kind of wake me up. And although that might not feel so good, it might be uncomfortable, it's not going to go away until I get the information that's
Mm,
there, right?
mhm, mhm. Yes, and by asking questions like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
"Why are you here? What are you trying to tell me?" Or "What's trying to emerge?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can, I've found it works differently for different people at different times, but you can ask the questions, inwardly, quietly, verbally in your mind's voice and kind of just wait for reflections to come. And sometimes the answers don't come until much later. That's another thing. Like, it doesn't have to be in that moment. Like, as soon as you pose the question, you're opening the door to receiving the awareness. So it might come later when I'm in the garden or when I'm talking with a friend or when I read something in a book, then the light bulb goes off.
Mhm.
And then another way you could do inner dialogue practice is just writing it, like actually write the question and then write the first answer that comes and then write the next question. Like you're having
Mhm.
like a letter back and forth.
Right.
And that's, yeah, both ways work.
Yeah. And I sometimes I think that, things can seem so daunting, for
Mhm.
people when, when we're just trying to get started. And so
Yeah.
I think for me in getting started with connecting with myself, I mean, definitely my spirituality had to be engaged with that. But also it's about, I think for me was what do I like? What don't I like?
Mm.
And, being able to sort of siphon through, well, if I don't like this, why don't I like this? Or how is this affecting me? How
Yeah.
does this have me feel? Do you think that's something that people could do?
I think that's great because simply put, when you're discovering, when you're feeling into what you like and what you don't like you said in the beginning, there's a visceral reaction. So you know what makes you feel good and you know what makes you feel bad. And sometimes we're kind of, denial is a powerful tool that
Mhm.
shields us, that's necessary at sometimes. And sometimes we think, like you're saying, we might think we like something, but if we really check in with our body, you get the butterflies, you get the knot in your stomach. Well, no, that's not really feeling too good, right? And so then, like, yeah, it's kind of like checking in with your body awareness, I would.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so that is leading me to the idea that trauma can be trapped in our bodies. And I think I saw something where your material might have mentioned the book The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
I'm not deep into the book. I just started that book
Mhm.
actually.
Good.
But can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think that, there's more information in our bodies, held in our bodies than in our brains, honestly. And so like we just talked about, like when you're trying to sense if something is good for you or not, if you check in with your body, there's no denying it, right? Because we know how it feels on the inside. And so when we've suffered trauma, it is held in our bodies. And, especially early childhood trauma, we found ways to protect ourselves, and which is a good thing. It's not entirely bad to dissociate, right? And the book
Mhm,
talks, The Body Keeps the Score talks about this, how to protect ourselves, like especially when we're small, if we're still in our family that's abusive, we have to kind of shut down sometimes
mhm,
to get
mhm,
through. And then as, adults, like I learned that I didn't have to do that anymore. And, it was years of kind of unwinding it through various different practices. But I think for me, one of the things that was really like a wake up call was recognizing that I would, one of the ways dissociation would show up was like I would end up like with bumps or bruises on my body, or I would like burn myself when I was cooking. And
mhm,
I wasn't trying to hurt myself, more that I was just kind of like not in my body. Right. And so that was at some point in my healing, that seemed really significant for me. I can't
mhm,
remember what the exact component was there, but it was a wake-up call where I began to just get more in tune with noticing. And so sometimes just slowing down, noticing. I mean, there's practices, there's yoga, right? Which is a great way to come into our bodies because we're purposefully practicing holding the pose, connecting with our breath. So that right there, you have to be in your body. And I began doing yoga as a daily practice about 35 years ago. And so that started me just kind of becoming more aware of when it was that I was falling outside of the body. So again, I could feel it. Like I'm a person who likes to do a lot of things, sometimes at once, and I move really quickly. So like when I notice myself just kind of moving too fast and feeling anxious, right?
mhm,
I just take a moment to stop, take a breath or 2 or 10, slow
mhm.
down, and then go back to what I'm doing. So and then each time we do this, so that's a point about the body keeping score, is we're retraining our brains. Like,
Yeah.
we're actually retraining our neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
Every time you bring awareness to it, you're creating more healing.
Can you share how when you were sharing, like, your experience? Because I can understand that. I think a lot of us I
Yeah,
know I can relate to that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, how do you make the connection between, I might bruise myself, I might burn myself accidentally. How do you tie that to, trauma that might
Well, I think the part that ties me in is the anxious feelings. Like when I know I'm moving too fast because I feel like I can't get it all done, or I feel like, I mean, here's a big one. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble. That's a
Mhm,
big one for trauma survivors, when I get that, and it's nervous on the inside. Like again, it's that butterfly feeling, that kind of, can't even feel nauseous sometimes. So it's really kind of just relating it to like what you said, what I know doesn't feel good. Because when I feel at peace, I know it. And that goes back to the garden. I
mhm,
go out in the garden, I feel completely at peace. I'm
yeah,
not spinning out. I'm not nervous. If I have other chores to do, I'm like, it can wait."
mhm,
I'm like totally at
yeah,
peace. So this
mhm,
is why I call this out as such a
yeah.
potent resource. Yeah.
And you mentioned, I think shortly after you, um, had a baby, you share some of your experiences in the
Yeah.
book, and you were mentioning just lying in bed and, your husband and daughter? D
My son at the
Your
time.
son, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, your son were, you could hear them
Yeah.
connecting and having a good time, and you're laying in the bed and you're not feeling good in your mind and spirit.
Exactly.
And
Feeling
so yes, can you share about that, and how did you come out of that space?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, so first I'd like to say that really I would say the beginning of, a lot of sexual trauma triggering that came up for me was during my pregnancy with my son. Yeah, and when I was talking with therapists through that, they assured me that is, a time of life that can really come up for a lot of women, right? So
Mhm,
that was really difficult because I was pregnant with my first child, and I was really trying to manage, like, just trauma triggers coming up all the time. So luckily, I had good, mental health care, and it was helping, but then after I had my son, I mean, what I now sort of recognize, and there's more validation around, like, postnatal trauma,
mhm,
right? And yeah, and postpartum and that kind of thing. So I guess that compounded it. But I can remember, like, just hearing my son laughing and playing, and, like, yeah, I couldn't get up out of bed, so I was, like, in a form of severe depression. And then I write in the book, I remember this one day in particular, it was a beautiful sunny day outside and I couldn't get out of bed, and a poem rang through my mind, and it was, "I hate you, sky, for being so blue. Hey there, mountain, fuck you too."
mhm.
And that for me right now, looking back on my life, this was 30 years ago, is so profound because I feel so held by the sky and the mountain now. Like,
Yeah,
to me, that was a wake-up call in itself. Like, how could I feel so disconnected from something that was so beautiful, that was calling to me to be held, right?
mhm,
So that was really the beginning of my deeper healing, and there's layers of healing all the time, and it was shortly thereafter that I found, a women's group for sexual trauma survivors in my town that I was in for 2 years, and that was pivotal because it's the witnessing and being witnessed by others. That was, like, just
mhm.
the next level. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then you also talk in your book about, how it can affect our sense of how we feel about our body, trauma, sexual abuse,
Mhm.
can affect how we feel about our bodies and our own sexuality.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, I write a little in the introduction. I mean, I try not to get too political, but I can't kind of help it because it is all a little political. I feel like it's all intertwined. The roots of sexual violence, of course, are political, and so I feel like what we're dealing with now is a collective, unconscious of sexual trauma. So, yeah, when I talk about, like, not being connected to sexuality, I mean, I think that's compounded for sexual trauma survivors, But I think women, have kind of been put through it with a disconnection from our sexuality, or like connecting us to a false sexuality, being rewarded for being overly sexual and also being condemned for it, right? Like it's the
Mhm.
Madonna whore complex. And so there's a lot there. And I think it shows up in each of us differently. But I do think that as trauma survivors, yes, it can compound that. And for me, luckily, well, I've been with my husband now for 30 years, and we've worked through a lot. And I've really had to, make the effort to work through it. But I really see divine sexuality as another thing that's part of our birthright. And so to reclaim that is a source of healing because, I'll be damned, if I'm going to let my abusers take over any part of my life, but especially that because our sexuality it's a beautiful thing. And so I've learned, to come in connection with it that is separate from what was done to me. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
yeah,
Yes. I, reading that, I it was reminding me of my own experience. I was sexually abused as a child, and I don't have a problem with my sexuality. I feel good and secure in my sexuality,
yeah,
but I do remember, some years ago, I was in a relationship, and I was in a long distance relationship, and it seemed like every time we would get together, who's someone I was in love with,
yeah.
but it seemed like every time we would get together, I would have a yeast infection.
Oh, interesting.
And so I had to acknowledge
Yeah,
there's something going on in my subconscious.
right.
And I don't know, I think it was just wanting to feel emotionally safe,
Mhm. Yeah.
and, that's what I connected it to. I don't know if I connected to, which maybe connects to, uh, sexual abuse,
Yeah.
but, I thought that was interesting because it wasn't anything I could deny. I'm like,
Right.
this can only be a coincidence
Yeah. Yeah, I
twice.
love that. I love that, and I love that you went to, like, wanting to know more about it, right? Like, now if you were my client, I might say, "Well, let's talk to that yeast infection." But seriously, you did in your own way. You were like,
Mhm.
"What does this mean?" And, yes, I mean, I think we've all had experiences where our bodies, our body keeps the score. It displays our deeper emotional challenges, and so, like, I can say for myself too that I can honestly say I've always enjoyed sex, right? Like I haven't been like physically fearful of it. But what you just said makes a lot of sense that on the emotional level, yes, I've always wanted to make sure that I felt emotionally connected to a partner and safe, like you said.
Mhm, mhm. And so with this book, you want people to be able to, at least start, have a tool to at least begin to get on this path for healing if they haven't already.
Exactly, and to know that whatever they're experiencing is valuable and valid, right?
Mhm,
But there's no wrong. There's no wrong stuff that happens, and like I said, sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it's really challenging, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, and I think that when we go deeper and feel inward, like we need to discover the places that feel safe so that we can be
mhm.
held to move forward.
Yeah. Can you talk a little more about hypnotherapy and your practice with that?
Yeah, so I've never seen clients one-on-one as hypnotherapy sessions. I did a course many years ago where I came to it through neurolinguistics, which I think is a really powerful process of connecting how our language affects our minds, right? So
Mhm,
as a coach, I really felt like that was sort of my obligation. Like the words I say are so important, but also, how do people receive words? And like, there's one book I think I have it in the bibliography is the now I'm gonna Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication,
yeah,
right?
very familiar.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's kind of like communication 101, how we can talk to each other, how we can talk to other people so that we're not getting into arguments, basically, and, like, it's to me, it's just life skills. But, so I wanted to study hypnotherapy because I wanted to be able to connect with my clients on a deeper subconscious level. So not only pick up on the clues, the cues on what they were saying and kind of help them to uncover more deeply, but also to kind of like run them through these practices that I've developed, and take them into like this psycho-spiritual space where it would really be more effective. So I
Mhm.
learned, how to work with my voice and how to kind of bring people deeper and how to bring them back up. And that's like, I am really proud of that in the audiobook because I feel like that
Mhm.
was me. Like I told my publisher when I first brought them the manuscript, this has to be an audiobook. And they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I was like, we're editing it. Okay, when are we going to record? Yeah, yeah, we'll do it. And then I just booked a session at the local audio book recording studio in Berkeley, California. And I was like, okay, I'm recording the audiobook now because I knew that this had to be done. And so this ties into the hypnotherapeutic approach.
So you will have a print version as well
Oh,
as
yeah.
the audio.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah. There's
yes.
print, audiobook, and ebook. It's
Mhm.
all out there now.
Yeah, I think I want the audiobook though because
Yeah.
I'll probably want both because I like looking at words, but,
Mhm.
it sounds like some of them is some of what you're doing and practices is almost like a guided meditation in a way.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Can
Mm.
you, just to go back to nature, talk a
Mhm.
little more. I love nature in the way that you were describing, and the ocean is my real jam. You know, looking at the ocean, being in the ocean,
Mm.
whatever with the ocean. But I have I would say in the last year, a new love and appreciation for trees.
Mm.
And so, would you talk a little about what trees give us more than what we, already know, and um, how we can connect and what they really offer on such a profound level?
Adrian, I love this so much. I can talk about this all day. Trees. Okay, so that's really interesting. I recently self-published an oracle card deck called the Spirit Wood Oracle because I had this inspiration years ago about trees as part of our innate source of healing, and then it dawned on me, which is kind of obvious, but like all of the tools, the wooden tools that are made from trees, and how they serve us in everyday life. So like, yes, making this connection. So, and it's also funny, I also work with the Bach flower therapy system, and I would say maybe half of the flowers in the system are tree flowers, the flowers that come from trees, and essences are made from them, and we take them internally, and they help to really create balance within. And so the trees, I mean, they're so strong, they're rooted. I write about it in the Spirit Wood Oracle in the guidebook. I write about how the forest is like this ancient lineage connected underground. So all living beings are connected by virtue of the forest. And that's real. Like I'm saying, that's not made up. The
Yeah.
trees are everywhere. And so when we find our connection with trees, it's like we find our groundedness, our rootedness. And then we hear about these practices, forest bathing. And in Japan and Finland, it's actually part of the government policy for people to go out into the forest and connect with the trees as a source of well-being. Like
Mhm.
for real, like they do this in school, they do this on their breaks at work because it works. And so how does it work? So I'm also a trauma-informed coach. So aside from my health coach certification, I became a trauma-informed coach because I wanted to learn more about that. And the data is in science. Quantum physics knows, and science knows that whenever we go out into nature, and for you right now, it's trees, and trees being so sturdy, it triggers a response in us that actually connects us to a sense of well-being. Our breathing slows, like we're saying, our breathing slows, our mind clears. And that is the parasympathetic nervous system. So
Mhm.
that's the good news for trauma survivors is you can just go outside, literally, cut a bouquet, look at a flower, play with a ladybug, whatever, and you're triggering your parasympathetic nervous system. So again, then you're retraining your brain to actually know that you're safe, to
Yeah.
know that you can connect with this greater source of healing. And
Mhm.
so what happens is the triggers become fewer and far between, in fact, but then they're still going to come up. And when they do, you can kind of come back to stasis more quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's thank you for sharing that, and they I find them as so symbolic of resilience and, such a resource for strength
Right.
because they are, they're standing so strong, and then, no matter what comes, we can look at a tree, in the stark of winter and just think, "Oh," and remember back when it was full, in full bloom and think, "Oh, we'll never see that again." But of course,
Right.
we're going to see that again.
Yeah.
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 So, well, let me ask you, uh, going back to how you connect with your own spirituality, is there a miracle or a blessing that you can share that you experienced that you can say this came from my divine essence?
Mm.
From
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with this at all.
Wow. Well, there are really so many, honestly. There are. And I have one in particular that I just wrote about yesterday, and I'll try to encapsulate it. So when I was a teenager, I was lost and I was doing street drugs, right? I was not the person that you see before you today. And I feel like I always had sort of a sense of like the divine spirituality. Like I played with tarot cards and things like that, but I was suffering and I was lost. And so one day in particular, I was in a really sketchy situation in a bad neighborhood where my boyfriend at the time left me alone to go score drugs. And I was left alone in a scary place. And I noticed a community center across the street. And so there were women and children there. So I kind of went over and stood by them and I tried to blend in. And one thing that happened that was really a miracle was it was a community center and they were having like an after school arts class. And a little girl ran out with this painting that she did and she held it up to her mother. And it was a painting of like a garden with a cat. And she said, "Mama, I'm going to live here someday." And her mother said to her, looked at her and was really touched and said, "I hope so." And in that moment, my boyfriend pulled up. I ran back across the street. I got in the car and a light bulb went off inside of me. And I never did drugs again after that moment.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And this was in New Jersey. I was about 18 years old. When I was about 24, I moved. Pretty much, I loaded up my car and moved with no plan to California, where I've lived ever since.
Mhm.
And I found my garden and my cat.
And what do you think that was telling you? What do you think your
So
spirit was saying to you?
yeah, well, I mean, shortly thereafter, I did get into, an NA program, which is Narcotics Anonymous, and I stayed with that for a few years, but they call it a higher power, right? And so
Uh-huh.
it was a higher power, and I guess what I can even define it as a higher power of divine will, because it was like this sense of willpower came over me that was greater than the addiction that made me like even though like I still wanted to do the drugs, like that day, my boyfriend did the drugs right in front of me and I abstained, and that was the first time ever I had done that. And so I still wanted it, but there was this will, this power of divine will in me that overcame me that I was like, "No, I can do this. I
Mhm.
better." Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That is a miracle, a blessing, and amazing.
It was.
That's that's
Yeah.
amazing. Uh, so how can people, find your book once it's published next Friday?
Yeah, they can find it everywhere books are sold. They can find it now. I know pre-orders are actually shipping early. I've
Wow.
heard that from a lot of people. Yeah, they've got my books ready. So, everywhere. Yeah, anywhere.
So they can order it now
Yeah.
on, Amazon or through their local bookstores.
Shop.org, local bookstores, Barnes& and Noble, wherever you want. Yeah.
And can they get in touch with you,
Mhm.
if they should they go to your website or email you, or what would be the best?
Absolutely. There's a contact form on my website, and I actually love, to hear from people, even if it's a question or just a comment. I really do appreciate that.
Mhm.
And then there's also a contact form for media inquiries, because I'm gonna be starting a book tour probably, after, the new year because things are quite busy for everyone with holidays. But yeah, yeah, I'm totally reachable.
And how have you seen, uh, clients did you say that you have or you have not worked with clients regarding this healing
Yeah,
process?
I worked with clients for almost a decade. I no longer work one-on-one because I'm mostly writing and speaking, so I don't have
Okay.
the time, but I do, workshops and groups where you can still, heal with me, and I found that that's just a better format is to meet with a lot of people at once, and my groups are still small, they're intimate, but I also find that group healing is another level of, empowerment that is I mean, one-on-one is great, and I hope that now my books sort of serve as the one-on-one, but then to get into a group is also really powerful.
Yes. Earlier today, I was listening to someone talk who wrote a book about the fight,
Mhm.
within ourselves to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And he said, just relating to what you said about groups, he was saying that it's good when we're on that path to a deeper self awareness to have someone who at some points in time can witness you.
Yeah.
And he said, I mean, he also said you have to also have your space, for, the
Yes.
process and all of that. But I thought that uh, that was so wise because my biggest shift came through a spiritual discussion group.
Yes.
And, I said, I'm going to show up authentically to this group. It was a Course in Miracles group. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that was the shift for everything for me.
Right.
Being in a bond with people where we didn't have to agree or see, but we bonded over this common love for this divine source.
Absolutely, and so, yeah, in my book, I have, the one chapter is get to know yourself better, and then another chapter is find your allies, because it, like, catalyzes the healing tenfold. I mean, and I write extensively about this, how this being witnessed and witnessing others, it's a give and a take, and it's like
Yes.
the best yeah, it's the best feeling, it's this love, again, like the eye gazing, it's just this acceptance too, like just knowing that you can show up with all your shit and be accepted with loving kindness. It's so
Mhm.
powerful, and accept others. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so do you have tools for people who may just be feel jolted by the world right now, and maybe that does take them to, a space in their trauma or a reminder or memory? Are there any tools that you recommend? I
Yeah,
know.
I mean oh, what were you gonna say?
No, I was thinking about nature as I was saying that, but are there additional?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many good tools, but I do for so okay, yeah, so like you just said, nature. Like when I was coaching people, I would ask women, when do you feel the most at peace? When do you feel the most held? And the answer, like 99.9% of the time, is when I'm in nature. So that to me, is just it's innate. So yeah, if there's nothing else, like if you're feeling so trapped and so alone and so scared, go for a walk. Like, it doesn't have to be like on a hiking trail. It can be in your neighborhood and touch a tree and notice the flowers, notice the butterfly that floats by. That's certainly foundational. And then also writing. And so I know there are some people who say they don't like to write or who are resistant to it. But I really do believe in this because this is a source of inner dialogue that is really therapeutic. And so, even if it feels awkward at first, I do encourage people to keep a journal and just write and write anything. Write if you're pissed, write if you're happy, write whatever feels silly, just write it down. And then the part of that practice is to don't go back and reread it until the new and full moon of each month. So you're reading back your 2 weeks prior on each new and full moon. Because what I found is most people who say that the writing practice doesn't work, they were never taught to go reread the writings. And
Mhm.
so that's when you get the big aha moments. Like when I go back and I read what I've written from 2 weeks before, I don't even remember writing most of it, but I'm like, "Aha, aha." There it is, there's the clue.
Yes.
And so it's just writing without censoring yourself and rereading it on the new and full moon. I use those as the markers because then we can be grounded more in nature. Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit, I think you did when we were talking about trees. You have in your book, you talk about flower remedies,
Yes.
I believe. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the Bach flower remedies were a system devised by a physician, Dr. Edward Bach, in 1930s England, and he was a homeopath. So for those who don't know what that means, it's about taking the most minute essence of a plant. I mean, homeopathy uses plant, mineral, everything, but in flower remedies, we're using flowers. So he actually made these tinctures by floating the freshest blooms of these certain flowers in a bowl of water. And then he made them into little remedies that he would give his patients. Now, he saw this as a need for healing on the physical level because he was seeing patients, and what he was noticing as a doctor was that no two patients had the same emotional experience around their physical suffering. So he saw a need to relate to their emotional level, not just, prescribing on the
Mhm.
physical. So he made these flower remedies, he tested them on himself. It's sort of mysterious how he came to what each one was used for, but he did use them on patients, and they've been used now for 100 years all over the world. I've used them on myself, I've used them on infants, animals, I've used them on plants to, cure plant disease, and they work. So I think, it is a little mysterious. It's quantum physics, though, which isn't entirely mysterious because
Mhm.
we know that everything is made up of energy. So, I believe it I understand it to be the energetics of the flowers that are then connecting with the energetics in our systems, creating harmony.
Are these drops that you can put in a tea or water or on your body or
You
both?
can take them in your mouth, you can put them in your drink, yeah, and they're sold. I give resources in the back of the book where you can buy them. You can make them, but that's a little trickier. I buy the remedies from the Flower Essence Society in Northern California, and then when I was working with clients, I would use their remedies to then prescribe to people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, I have so enjoyed talking with you,
Mm.
and I'm really excited about your book and it reaching the world, really.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you come back again.
I would love to.
Thank you.